Right, and here we go, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us here on this WhatsApp. As you know, things are changing at a breakneck or happening at a breakneck speed, and so as a result, what I'm doing is having as many of these short WhatsApp discussions on the various topics and the various issues which are being raised. On quite frankly a very regular basis. Just very quickly to respond to Kate's message, Kate writes, "Good morning. Has there been any assistance made with VAT payments to businesses?" Kate, there's been no gazette. There's been no indication from the Treasury Department or the Ministry of Finance as things stand at this moment in time as far as VAT payments are concerned. To be honest, I don't even know, and we can find out, but I don't even know whether the VAT department is regarded as an essential service or not as an essential service. But we can certainly endeavor to find out, and I will come back to you in that regard. So everybody, thank you, and thanks for joining us. And please just note, as is custom and practice, I will mute your microphones until such time as you want to speak, in which case you just need to unmute your microphone and ask the question or make the statement. And let's get going. So we finally have the publication midday yesterday from the ministry, and it is the Ministry of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, which in fact is the ministry that is responsible for the regulations around disaster management. We have the regulations, and what you should take note of is that it's this date here, the 25th of March, which is the important distinguisher of this document. This is the latest document. It is the document which, in fact, around further regulations will refer to. And I think what's critically important as we begin this process is for me to refer you to the other documents which in fact were posted, and that is the original of this document, which was the 17th of March, which is also being copied to you. And then from this document, Appendix C, which in fact is in relation to declaration of essential services until such time as Business Portal is up and running. Although Business Portal at the moment is very, very quiet as to what it's going to do around the declaration of essential services. But when it is operational, we'll endeavor to find out and to inform you. But as things stand, and because you literally only have until 5 o'clock this afternoon to sort things out, there are two components of essential services we've recommended. The first is that you complete Appendix C, or rather, if you are not the essential service, you get the essential service that has commissioned your service to complete Appendix C, so that in the process of completing Appendix C and it being oathed, you then supplement it with the affidavit that was posted yesterday morning, and that will serve as sufficient evidence in the short term until such time as you're able to get BizPortal to, in fact, also give you a essential service registration certificate if and when you manage to get through their processes. And I'm sorry to sound so vague, but I suppose one has to be sympathetic with government as well, knowing that they're having to scramble in putting the system together and making it work, because BizPortal wasn't previously established and set up for the declaration of essential services. So I think we can all be tolerant of the fact that it may take a day or two. However, if you're an essential service and you open for business tomorrow, then you have to have some backup. And the backup is Annexure C or Appendix C on the one hand, and the affidavit, which is filled in on behalf of each of the individuals who might be working in your business. On the other hand, what I've also posted is the declaration form, and thank you for Jacqueline D'Amato of JDM for sending me that declaration form. I'm not certain where it comes from, but what it does for us is it's a declaration of citizens' movements in exceptional cases. It's Form B. It's a one-page form. Should anybody need to be on the road at any moment in time. It's just something for you to give, something for you to show should you be stopped and should you be on the road. And, we have no way of knowing what the process will be. I'm just quickly showing you what that Appendix C looks like. It's Declaration of Citizens' Movements in Exceptional Cases. And basically, you're saying I'm everything from visiting a pharmacy all the way through to going to a ceremony, for example, funeral, wedding, christening, etc. And as you will know, or you might not know, but you can still go to a funeral or a wedding or a christening, but you cannot have gatherings of more than 50 people there at any moment in time. And there's social distancing which has to be observed. So that's just a very useful form for anybody within your family or associated with your business that is not in an essential service mold, who might need to just explain their presence on the road or on the highway, or in fact anything like that. Good. So let's start moving then through this government gazette. So um, the one thing that you do need to be aware of, and in fact it is contained in this gazette itself as Appendix A, is the fact that government are saying that provision definitely, very, very definitely is going to need to be made here for the declaration, or rather for, let's call it, committing individuals who might not ordinarily want to be committed for purposes of medical examination, isolation, or quarantine. And so it is this which will be an order of court, a magistrate's court, and there have been special magistrates' courts which have been established, which in fact will have to be signed and issued against you should you refuse to go into isolation, quarantine, or even for a medical examination should you be directed to. This is only the end of the process. This is only what happens if you're recalcitrant. It's not something you should ordinarily be wary of or scared of, because I'm very certain that everybody on this call are people who, in fact, want to make this thing work and want to ensure that their family and their employees make this thing work. But it is important for you to nevertheless be aware of the fact. So these additions of and amendments to the definitions are against the 17th of March original document. There are no surprises in terms of any of these definitions that you have to be worried about, as far as I can see, and as far as I'm concerned. Now, as far as quite frankly, everything up to point number 6 is they're simply relating to other aspects that you don't necessarily need to be concerned about. And it's really about who gets admitted to a health establishment, who goes into voluntary quarantine, and who has to go for medical examination. I think what's important under Amendment 7 is this, Amendment 7.2, which says a person is guilty of an offence if that person fails to comply or contravenes the provisions of Regulation 6 and 8, which is the order of any appointed person who is entitled to make an order to you or to make a request of you, or any of the other kinds of indicators to you that you need to go to a medical doctor, you need to go into quarantine, or you need to be admitted to a hospital. If you say no to any of those things, then they are entitled to have you taken before a magistrate's court, i.e. arrested, where in fact the magistrate's court will then make a determination, and special magistrate's courts have been set aside specifically for this purpose. So please just completely understand those directives. So I think 11A is something you need to take cognizance of, and that is that you might not be an essential service, and the essential service list is attached to Appendix B. You might not be an essential service. However, you might be producing essential goods for an essential service. So you need to understand this distinction. Essential goods means the goods referred to in paragraph A of Annexure B, as may be amended from time to time. So there is a list of goods, and we will go over those goods in a little while. Essential services are those people that use those essential goods to offer those essential services. And so in that regard, it is critically important, ladies and gentlemen, that you understand where you are in the value chain or the supply chain of those businesses sufficiently for you to be able to distinguish, I am not an essential service, And in reality, therefore, I can't sign off the certificates for my suppliers, but I am a supplier to an essential service. And this is the specific range of goods that I supply to essential services. The point I do want to make at this moment in time, and you need to be cognizant of this fact, it is not umbrella coverage, which means that if you are a spaza shop, for example, and as a spaza shop you have 1,000 SKUs or 1,000 different items on your shelves, and some of the items on your shelves relate specifically to essential goods for essential services. And I can't think of any at this moment in time, but let's say, for example, masks. Let's say, for example, hand sanitizer. Were you to regard yourself as an essential service that needs to remain open, you must understand that you can only be restricted to selling the masks and the hand sanitizer, not the Coca-Cola. So it is not umbrella coverage, and you can be certain that the South African Police Services have been instructed to delve deeper into an essential services a place of operation that remains open, to look at the product range that they're selling and to see that that product range is restricted to the essential goods on the schedule, on the list of Annexure B in paragraph A, which says essential goods. So please understand that you run the risk of facing a fine or imprisonment if you are an essential, if you're a business which is open for essential services and you are trading under an umbrella assumption that all of your services or everything in your store is in fact entitled to be sold during the period of the lockdown. It is not the case. And you please need to understand that. And in your mind, you need to understand that. So it's very much like going into a pick and pay that is not allowed to sell liquor after 5 o'clock. And you'll see that their entire liquor division has been shut off for the day. It's exactly that scenario. But this is for 3 weeks now. So if you are going to remain open, if a element of your business is related to essential services, you have to secure behind lock and key the balance of your business or take those products off of your shelf. Otherwise, you run the risk of prosecution. And remember that when you're prosecuted, it is for compliance purposes. So understand it's part of the chain. And please, you cannot blame government for wanting to do their jobs here. The head of the institution is something that it has to be read with the definition of institution, and you need to know that the institution is either a public or a private institution that is engaged in the supply or distribution of essential goods or services. It is the head of the institution, the chief executive officer of a private institution, or the chief executive officer or equivalent of a public institution, the accounting officer of the public institution, that will eventually be signing off the Schedule C certificates for its suppliers within the supply chain of the business. Now, I know there's been a significant amount of confusion and misunderstanding around this. I hope I've made it clear, but are there any questions in this regard before I go any further? I'll unmute your microphones. What I will do is, Sharon, I will use you as an example, not pick on you, but use you as an example. If I am a call center and I have 50 clients, and 40 of those clients are outbound call centers, I'm trying to sell something, but 10 of those clients are clients who are in fact running the call center services for essential service businesses, like the hospitals, like the police, etc., then my services as a call center can only be restricted or have to be restricted to those services which are servicing the needs of the essential service businesses that have commissioned my services. So it should be very, very clear. There should be no need for any confusion in that particular regard. Although I do need to say that there are a significant number of companies, and DTI has already complained about this, that are trying to force themselves as round pegs through square holes or vice versa, because they want to remain open. Remember, and I think that this is a critical point that I need to make at this stage, there is no use in remaining open, because the people who will come into your businesses, unless you're a general dealer, those people are people who need the essential service products, essentially your clients at the end of the day. So if you're selling goods which are regarded as essential service goods and you're not an essential service yourself, then in fact your relationship of sale is business to business and not business to consumer. So please just always bear that in mind. So the lockdown is pretty specific in terms of definition. There's confusion, and again, Jackie, thank you for bringing this to my attention. But there seems to be people who've interpreted this lockdown as from 1 minute past midnight this morning. In other words, today, Thursday, which is absolutely not the case. The lockdown is not currently in force. The lockdown is tonight, 1 minute after midnight on Friday morning is when the lockdown commences, and that's tomorrow morning. So you still have a full day of activity ahead of you before, in fact, you're subjected to the activities of lockdown. Definition of movement has been added, and it's been added because it is now a legal imperative. Movement means entering or leaving a place of residence, or in the case of people not ordinarily resident in the republic, their place of temporary residence while in the republic. So, your movement into your place of residence is not a problem. Illegal movement of people who do not reside at your place of residence, but in fact reside somewhere else because they're coming to visit you. And let's be honest, because potentially they're coming to work in your business, in your home, which is not classified as an essential business. If a police person knocks on your door and says, "We've just seen this person walk into your premises. Could you please explain why they are there?" And you say, "Well, she's come to clean my house or he's come to clean my garden," that will be regarded as illegal and you will immediately be subject to a fine. It's highly unlikely anything beyond a fine, or maybe the first time it occurs, just censure. But please be aware that movement means the movement of people who ordinarily don't live or work in your facility or at your home into your place of residence, and vice versa. So please be aware of that. If it's going to happen, then please endeavor to fill out that form that I discussed at the beginning of today's discussion, which was the form dealing with the movement of a person who is a citizen, etc. So please just be very aware of that. Any questions at this stage, or can I in fact move on? Right. I will take it that there are no questions. Okay, good. I just want to quickly check if there's let's see here. What about stationery? We supply stationery to hospitals and doctors and hotels. Well, Ivan, sorry, that's Dave Cohen. Dave, if you're supplying stationery to hospitals, doctors, and hotels, certainly not hotels, but to doctors and hospitals, then in fact you would need the CEO or the delegated person to sign Schedule Appendix C to say that you're an essential goods supplier to them. And once done, then you will be allowed to, be on the road, sending one person in a car to deliver those goods and services to the hospitals and to the doctors, etc., and then to come back to the place of work. And you will be allowed to stay open for purposes only of either manufacturing those products or dispatching and receiving those products, but not for anything you might be doing with hotels, etc., etc. So you just need to understand how you navigate it is an art, but the application of the law will certainly be done as a science. So please just bear that in mind. All right, good. So moving on. Section 11B is pretty self-explanatory. And really, I think Section 11B 4C is what I was talking about. Retail stores selling essential goods is prohibited from selling any other goods. And really, it cannot be clearer than that. But certainly, I know that there will be some of you who may be considering muddying those waters and therefore opening yourself up for prosecution. And please, do not believe that at any moment in time it will be an unfair prosecution. The whole purpose of this regulation, ladies and gentlemen, is so that you do not attract people who should be in isolation at home or quarantine at home or just at home because of the lockdown, that you do not attract those people because they know you generally sell those products. So they're happy to walk to your shop and say, I'm going for food, in the knowledge that they can buy pens and rubbers, etc., at your place. Having said that, if it is an essential service on Schedule B and you do stock it, then it is highly unlikely that it will be regarded as anything other than shopping for needs and essentials. Even though, if this regulation is applied properly, it will be applied in a far more draconian way. I just want to emphasize what I said at the beginning again, and that is number 8, which says attendance at a funeral is limited to 50 people and will, for purposes of these regulations, not be regarded as a prohibited gathering, provided that no night vigil shall be held and that all safety measurements are strictly adhered to. And I do add very sadly that, in fact, I got a specific question about this yesterday. A friend of mine who knew that his mother only had hours to live had been told that he wouldn't even be able to officiate or go to her funeral. And so, I was quite happy to put his mind at ease. But really, these measures, while they are draconian, are not meant to be unfair to you. And we do not have a government or government departments who are going to be uncaring or unthinking or unfair to you. And I actually made that statement yesterday in relation to UIF. I have never had a situation with UIF dealing on behalf of numerous clients previously where UIF have ever closed the door, ever said no, ever said we're not bending over backwards to regularize. We do not have unapproachable people working in the majority of government departments. Home Affairs, unfortunately, I think is different, but that's just my personal feeling. Okay, public transport. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to be aware of this because public transport is on the roads, remembering there are going to be 2 entities who are patrolling the roads. The South African Police Services that are trained in dealing with people, and then the South African Defence Force that are not trained in dealing with people. Their primary concern is safety and security and protecting the assets and the interests of the country. Their primary concern is not being nice to people. If you have the displeasure of having to come up against members of the South African Defence Force, I implore upon you to be deferential and to understand, again, that they're only doing what they are told is their job. And always try have the discussion with a member of the Defence Force in the presence of a member of the South African Police Services, because the South African Police Services have had different kinds of training and do understand that they're first and foremost serving a community and not necessarily only the interests of the country as a whole. So please understand that and try and migrate towards a member of the police force rather than a member of the Defence Force should you be stopped in a roadblock, or in fact, should you be walking to the shops and be stopped by either of those 2 services on the road. I am aware in my own area, for example, that precinct policemen have already been appointed, for example, to shopping strips, shopping malls, etc., etc. So the shops that are essential services have already been informed and introduced to their precinct police. And if that's happened in my area, I assume it's happened all over the place. So what you do need to take into account in terms of transport as well is that where transport is justified, there is a general provision that runs throughout all of the things that have been gazetted. There is a general provision that basically says no vehicle should ever have more than 50% of the license capacity, or the number of should never have more than 50% of the people representing 50% of the license capacity of that vehicle or vessel. And that the owner of the vehicle as well as the driver of the vehicle will be prosecuted if that 50% is exceeded. And also, please remember that if it is your vehicle, you need to have stipulated, and I would imagine it would be easier for you to actually sellotape it to the dashboard or to the inside of one of your windows, but your hygiene conditions and limitations of exposure in terms of social distancing within that vehicle. It's good to have that, and if you are stopped and someone sees that you actually have that on your window or on your dashboard, it just adds to the validity of what it is that you're doing. If these conditions are abused, for example, if you order an Uber and Ubers will be available, taxis will be available, but only to transport people who work in essential services. But if you are going to do that, if you're going to order an Uber, if you are going to order a taxi, and in the process of doing that, you're found to be abusing the essential service guidelines, just always be aware of the fact that it's not only you that you're putting at risk in terms of prosecution, but it's the driver of that vehicle, and also it's the owner of that vehicle that you're putting at risk. So, please use your corpse in that regard. Okay, let's move on. Okay, I'm not going to talk about the resources by the state during lockdown. I think it's been well publicized, and certainly there should be no homeless people. There should be no people who have been dispossessed on the roads, because there are facilities and shelters which municipalities have had by law to have demarcated and made accessible and made available for all of those individuals. Should you come across, for whatever reason, one of those individuals on the road, you can then assert to 11D of this document. You can call your local municipal office that Sharon, I would imagine, is being serviced by one of your call centers, for information on where the closest municipal shelter is that has been made available for these individuals. And in fact, then I would imagine that if you were to put that person in your car, or ask your driver from your business to transport that person to the shelter, you will not be prosecuted. I cannot account for any overzealous policeman or any overzealous soldier, but I would imagine you would have enough of an excuse or a reason, particularly if you prepared just a covering letter to that effect, to be able to transport that person to that shelter. And let's be honest, that would be your civic duty. But I think more importantly, it's part of why we're here and why we're doing this, to try and all make a difference. Right. I think 11G, important for you to know. For purposes of this chapter, any person who contravenes regulations shall be guilty of an offense, and on conviction liable to a fine or to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 6 months, or to both such fine and imprisonment. Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's most probably not the right place to mention this, but I do want you to listen to that interview I did with Manny Witz, who is a criminal defense attorney, because if you or any member of your family or any member of your staff are arrested for whatever reason, remember that there are civil rights that apply to you, including the access to a lawyer, etc., etc. He might not be able to visit you, but he's certainly entitled to make telephonic contact and on occasion even video contact with you where you are being held. But please listen to the interview with Manny Witz, because there is a process before you are imprisoned. You're taken to a police station, you're allowed to contact your lawyer, etc., etc., etc. So I would imagine it might be useful for you to have someone like Manny or any other criminal defense attorney's number on hand, just in case. And please, I'm not suggesting that's going to happen, but what I am suggesting is you need to have a resource or a number at least to be able to phone and to contact someone should any of this happen to you. But it's not going to happen to you. But should any of this in fact happen to you, I'm going to read one question here, because I think it is important. Either we supply batteries to supermarket and logistics companies that transport food and pharmaceuticals. We propose to supply on collection to keep their vehicles on the road. The doors won't be open. It's upon order. Our requirement is to get a staff member to our premises. Who issues the permit, us or our customers? Let me just see this. There's more to the question. Oh no, the question ends there. Us or our customers? Well, Bill, it is your customer that is the essential service that would need to sign Appendix C for you, Annexure C for you, so that that together with the affidavit that was posted yesterday morning should serve for short-term purposes of this need. Eventually, when it is up and running, you will be required to register your business for essential service purposes on the Biz portal, and I have posted that on the WhatsApp group, and in fact on the invitation that was sent out for this discussion. When Biz portal is working, it's not currently working, I'm informed. But you'll register. I think you pay 175 Rand to register your business on BizPortal, and they'll give you the necessary documents that will then accompany Schedule C and accompany your appendix for the individual who is in fact doing the work for you, should you need to send people out. I think what's important is that my understanding at this moment in time, and there's very scant information about how DTI want BizPortal to work, except for the minister to say BizPortal has been created or has been extended. But my understanding is that you will need to show that you have a registration number or a registration letter from the DTI. You get that through BizPortal. And then you still need Schedule C, because Schedule C shows how, as a essential service goods provider or an essential service business, this is who you're providing those businesses to or those goods to. So Schedule C will be important. The certificate from BizPortal will be important. And then for each individual who's doing the activity or working in your facility for you, the affidavit as well. You can never have too much documentation. There's a message from Kate Kyle that says, I've just to confirm my understanding, we may be called upon by a company that has been certified as an essential service. If we have an affidavit to the person going to site and have a copy of that company's essential service certificates where they're going to, yes, Kate, and also if you have the certificate of BizPortal registration on behalf of DTI for that essential services when they can eventually get it. I think that BizPortal are going to be so overwhelmed. I doubt they're going to be able to get everything out by tomorrow morning. So you're going to have to trade under the two documents that you do have in your possession, which is the Appendix C and is the affidavit in response to your question. But thank you for that question. All right, now we get to the meaty stuff. I've already covered Annexure A, which is the order for a person to go on site of isolation, quarantine facility, or for a person to go for medical examination. It's not draconian. It's what the order from the magistrate's court will eventually look like. And so you need to take it in that vein. Annexure B is for those of you wanting to be regarded as essential services or supplying essential service goods. Annexure B is the annexure, the go-to annexure, until it is supplemented or changed by the department. And if it is, I will make that information available to you on our WhatsApp group. But Annexure B is pretty self-explanatory, and it is extremely wide. If I look at it, for example, it says food, any food product, including non-alcoholic beverages, which quite frankly could also include not just raw food, but pre-cooked and finished food, which is supplied through an essential service business. Animal food, chemicals, packaging, ancillary products, etc. Cleaning, a whole series of cleaning and hygiene products, which are either manufactured or supplied, and then medical as well. Fuel, including coal and gas, and basic goods, including airtime and electricity. And in fact, I was called this morning by a company that sells airtime and explained to them, or they really knew, but explained to them that if their business was to remain open, it would be only for purposes of selling airtime and electricity, and at this moment in time, not handsets, because handsets are not regarded as essential goods. Although, if they sell handsets to an essential service, and they're customized handsets, and for example, walkie-talkies or cell phones which are locked and only for the frequency of that business, they might very well be able to get away with classifying that those handsets need to continue to be supplied to those essential service businesses. So while it seems muddy, just understand the value chain, supply chain, and you should be all right. The services is the one to be considering, because it is the services that will in fact use the goods for purposes of continuing with the supply of these services. And as you can see, there are a fortune of services. One wonders why even bother with not allowing all businesses to be open, given the full range which is included in these services. So, for example, I was asked, are vets allowed to stay open? Well, vets are required to be open because they're regarded as essential services. I was asked, do chiropractors have to remain open? And the bottom line is chiropractors are regarded as medical health service suppliers, but you need to be aware that if you are a member of an association, it might be that the association has in fact negotiated with the Department of Trade and Industry or the Department of Health that even though it falls into the services list, it has voluntarily negotiated to take its members out of the essential services list. So if you believe that you're a medical, let's say, for example, you're a podiatrist, and I'm just using that as an example, but let's say you're a podiatrist, and the Association of Podiatrists have negotiated with the Health Professions Council that they will not define their members as essential services for whatever reason, and I cannot understand why, but for whatever reason, then even though a podiatrist could allege and say, or could assert and say, I'm a medical health service, I'm a medical service, even though they could say that, I'm a healthcare practitioner and I'm registered as a healthcare practitioner. If the policeman or the soldier who is asking the question has a list, and they might have an electronic list of self-exempted medical service classifications, and they see that podiatry, the Association of Podiatry, has said we will not be regarding ourselves as essential services, then even though you're asserting the right under B1, you do not have the right to assert that right because your association, which speaks collectively on your behalf, has in fact exempted you on a block basis from being in that classification. So you really do need to keep a very close communication with your association. And in some instances as well, if you belong to a bargaining council, you need to keep very close link to your bargaining council, communication with your bargaining council. And I'll tell you why. I had a question this morning in the electronics industry on UIF and the definition, or rather the calculation of how much money a person should be paid generally. And in that particular bargaining council, there is a formula for leave which applies to staff in companies which fall under that bargaining council, where not only is the basic of a salesperson taken into account in terms of a leave calculation, but commission as well is taken into account in terms of leave commission. Now, if there is that kind of directive generally from a bargaining council, but there is no specific directive from the bargaining council as to whether or not that directive pertains or applies under lockdown situations, then it is a gray area, it is a muddy area, and a member of a bargaining council might very well say, you had to assert that that particular provision applied, and because of that, I'm only calculating leave on the basis of basic pay and not on the basis of commission as well. So you need to keep a very close communication with your business association and ask them if there are any special negotiations or agreements or dispensations you need to be aware of, because a lot of the time they might not have got that information to you. And you also need to communicate with your bargaining council, asking them, is it business as usual? Are there any special provisions which might in fact apply to me? Certainly, I can tell you for a fact that the magistrates court and any judges on duty as well will apply the principle that ignorance is no excuse under these circumstances. You're obliged to go the full hog in trying to determine if there are any special provisions that apply to you. Annexure C is the permit to perform essential services. At this moment in time, we have no idea in knowing whether or not Business Portal will take it upon itself to issue this permit. But until such time as we do know, because remember, Business Portal is something that was literally only released this morning or last night for public consumption by the Minister Patel, as the place that you would go to register your essential services. But I'm telling you to do this manually at this moment in time. And then anything that comes out from Business Portal down the line will be regarded as supplementary, as a luxury, as something you do in addition to having done the basics. Annexure D talks about places and premises closed to public, is pretty self-explanatory, except in the instance where, for example, a hotel has been locked down, but there are guests in the hotel who were booked throughout the period who remain in the hotel. So the hotel will be able to stay open, but only to service those guests and not to service new incoming guests or to advertise its services. In that instance, but also in the instances where facilities have been repurposed. So, for example, a school is off the radar in terms of you being able to go into, unless that school has been repurposed as a hospital or has been repurposed as a place of refuge for people who need shelter. So you just need to understand that there are nuances at this moment in time to all of these things. But you will be able to phone your local government office, local government helpline, and in that process, you will be able to determine which facilities have been made available. Sharon, I know this is an imposition, but I'm going to ask you to possibly do something for me, and that is if you could talk to your members and determine from your members whether or not there are any helpline numbers or helpline facilities that they are running on behalf of essential services that they would like to give you contact numbers for. If it's possible for the CCMG to put that kind of list together by asking your members for that information so that we can publish that list on our WhatsApp group, I think that would be very, very helpful. If you're still talking to me, Sharon, and I haven't put you off, and if you're still online. Sharon, did you hear me? All right, Sharon will come back online. But please, I do implore you. Oh, there you are. Sorry, Sharon, you were saying?
Sorry, I was actually typing on the chat group. Yes, will do, no problem.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, just so that you know, Sharon Hague is the CEO of the call center grouping, which is the association in the call center industry, call center management group for the call center industry. And so, Sharon, I think you're a very important conduit in this process. So thank you for agreeing, even though I haven't asked you yet to play that role. Right, moving on. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think at this moment in time, I have taken up 45 minutes. I wanted this only to be 40 minutes. So can we now possibly move to questions and answers and anything which might be confusing you that you do want that you do want clarification about? Can I just say this while you're thinking about your questions? I was asked a question about insurance cover for essential goods supply or essential service supply. Please, I'm imploring you, if you are an essential service or if you're an essential service product supplier or service supplier, contact your insurance company today and tell your insurance company in no uncertain terms in writing that you're notifying them of the fact that you are classified and you're going to be performing essential services or supplying goods to essential services. And ask them please to confirm in writing that your normal cover and any additional cover they might want to offer you, for example, cover should you need representation if you're arrested, etc., etc. But any cover which normally you have bought from them will remain for you as you model yourself as an essential service or as you classify yourself as an essential service. Do not go in tomorrow with the blind assumption that you are automatically covered and I don't want to say allowing, but putting your insurance company in a position where they have to reject any claim should anything happen because they exempt cover in the instance where you have to perform essential services or supply essential service products. It's just a precaution, but I'm asking you all to take that action and talk to your insurance company. So I've said to you, talk to your business association, talk to your bargaining council, and talk to your insurance company so that you can show you've gone the whole hog, you've gone the every bit of the way in trying to inform yourself of everything which might pertain and apply to your business. Do not go into this blindfoldedly. Do not go into this putting your head in the ground because it's not going to work in the long run. Okay, now I'm unmuting your microphone and I'm asking you, is there anybody who wishes to ask any question or make any statement at this moment in time? All right. So I see there are no questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I appreciate the fact that you've attended and participated in this webinar. Sharon, thank you for agreeing to do what you do. Those of you who keep sending me very important documents, very important posts, etc., please continue to send them to me on my private WhatsApp 0828805316. And I will curate them and I will then post them onto our WhatsApp group so that the members of the group are not overwhelmed and unnecessary comments are not regularly posted and dialogue entered into. That's not the reason for the WhatsApp group. Thank you so much for joining me. And guys, this is an art, it's not a science. We're hankering down over the next couple of hours. Maybe we want to have a 1 minute past 12 online virtual party, but remember you can't drink alcohol. But nevertheless, let us try as best we can to get through this thing together. I am going to organize regular discussions as webinars. And importantly, I am also going to ask this of you, and that is that you start talking to your managers and your team leaders, etc., anybody in your organization who might have access, because once we've normalized, I'm going to start running general training sessions, training exposure, asking subject matter experts to run webinars for us, master classes for us on a whole range of issues, not to do with coronavirus, but really to at least continue to enrich your managers and groups of people that you believe are at home, are doing nothing at home, and would benefit from half an hour or an hour of enrichment daily, just to keep their minds ticking, to understand the policies and procedures which are contained in, for example, Basic Conditions of Employment Act, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, etc., etc. And even though your people are at home, you are entitled to say to them, guys, please participate in this webinar. There was one question I want to address, and let me address this question before signing off, and that's about UIF. And it's a difference. It's about the difference between the amount of money that the UIF department will pay back to the company to pay to the employee in terms of a formula that it applies, and in fact what the employee will be out of pocket. And there are two ways of compensating an employee for being out of pocket. You can say to them you have to take leave pay, or you can say, in other words, that difference, which at a very minimum will be 30%, where UIF will pay 70% and there'll be a 30% gap. You can agree to pay that difference as a company, and you can agree to either pay that difference as, let's call it a special provision, where you're not expecting anything back for it, or you can say, we're paying that difference and then we will set it off proportionately against any leave which might be due to you. But I do want to implore you, ladies and gentlemen, to always understand that there is a very strong likelihood that these 3 weeks will be extended, because provision has been made for the lockdown to be extended up to 3 months, number one. And that's a possibility. It's not a certainty, but it's a possibility. And that in the process, individuals will have to have banked sick leave and banked as much of their normal leave due to them as is possible to ride out that full period, and God forbid after that 3-month period. So we're in uncharted territories, and I want to implore upon you to understand the more you can do for your employees at this moment in time, the more you can retain the employees you need to retain to get up and running down the line. So please always just bear that in mind. Thank you so much for attending, and I'm sure we'll chat again later.
Saba.